Well, welcome to Medical Sales U. I'm your host, Dave Starrett, where we are helping you break into the industry. And I know a lot of you are just kind of testing the waters. You're not sure if you want to break into medical sales. Some of you have a clinical background. You're interested in sales altogether. So we have all types of listeners, those who want to, break into, a different specialty, those who want to break into device, those who want to break into specialty oncology, pharmaceutical, genetic testing. And so if you're interested, join our program at Medical Sales U. I'm mentoring some students who want to specifically get into that career and those who want to advance their careers. So check us out and apply to our program at Medical Sales U. We have a special guest today, and our guest today is Tom Ziglar. He is the son of the legendary Zig Ziglar. Tom has continued his father's legacy and has continued to write best-selling books himself. And he's led a team and he's spoken to across every single industry. And Tom, the reason I have you on the show is because there are general principles that you have helped me with. When I was thinking about getting into sales altogether, I left the nonprofit ministry world. I came by your office there in Dallas, Texas, and I sat in one of your meetings and I learned some of those transferable principles of life, communication, leadership, communication, sales that were transferable to medical sales. And I think what our audience is going to learn today will help them, whether they decide medical sales or not. Maybe it's not medical sales. Maybe there's a different career path for them. But Tom, thank you so much for joining this podcast and this show.
Well, Dave, thanks for having me on. I love sales. I was born a salesperson, as evidenced in Columbia, South Carolina, February 2nd, 1965. Dad put a birth announcement in the newspaper, and it said John Thomas Ziglar, a salesman, was born February 1st, 1965. So
wow,
I've been in it my whole life, and I've got a newspaper article to prove it. So
wow, no pressure. It was just a calling on your life at birth. That's pretty amazing. Do you remember, take us back, what were some of the first things that you sold? Do you remember early in your career?
Wow, the first thing that I sold halon fire extinguishers when I was still in high school. That didn't last very long, but I got all trained up and went out and made some sales. And you can't even sell halon anymore because of the ozone damage that it does. But unless you're in IT and you've got a extremely valuable computer system that you're protecting, that's what you use halon for, airplane engines. But for household, they don't do it anymore. Yeah, but that was direct sales. That was either knocking on somebody's door or getting a referral and talking to them about something they had no idea that you were going to talk to them about. So,
wow. What was it like? I mean, I'm sure people have asked you this, people whose father was very successful in a field as an author. Did you ever feel like the pressure, or was there a moment in your life where you felt like this was a calling for you? I mean, you worked a number of jobs, but soon you were writing your own books, but that didn't happen overnight. What was that process like?
Yeah, I never felt pressure because Dad made it really clear to me and my sisters that, there was no obligation or high expectation that you're going to follow and do what I do. It was always, hey, you're unique, you're created in a special way. Dad always told us, he said, whatever you do with 100% integrity and 100% effort, and I'll stand behind you, right? So he wanted us all in, and he wanted us to do whatever we did with the right way. And so,
I love that.
Yeah, so I started to work at the company after college, really to support my golf habit. I thought I was going to be a professional golfer, and then I figured out how good those guys are and went into sales in the company and just kind of fell in love with it and moved from there into leadership, and kind of the rest is history. The only kind of mental challenge I had is when I started speaking. Because that was probably, other than sales, it was as a public speaker that Dad's reputation was built. And I would.
When did you first start speaking?
So that was, I'm 59. It was in my early 40s because I told everybody no before that. So about 15, 16 years is when I started speaking, and I just didn't want to do it. Right, it just wasn't me. And then they talked me into it. I went, and it was fun. It was good. I got good feedback, but my stomach was in knots. So the second and third time, same thing. And this went on for a while, and I just had to sit myself down and go, what's going on here, right? Because that's, it's okay to be nervous. It's something else to have that kind of worry and anxiety and all that stuff that's going on. And I realized that I had bought into a lie. And the lie that I'd bought into, one that I told myself, certainly my father never told me this. I bought into the lie that I thought people wanted me to be like my dad on the stage. Right?
It's a lie that a lot of us, a lot of times we assume things, but we all have our unique gifts, our unique skill sets. We learn 100%. From our parents. We learn from those who've gone before us. But you are unique. You're leading a team for a new generation. I want to, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say. So from a style and personality perspective, that was a lie. They don't, I thought they wanted me to be like Dad. And then when I realized I could be myself, because I'm a nerd, I'm kind of dry sense of humor. I'm not running around and on stage and all that. But what they did want is they wanted me to show up prepared and have the same principles and values, right? So those are the things that never change. And so that's what a lot of us tell us. We go into sales and we say, well, I'm not the outgoing, gregarious, blah, blah, blah person, so I'll never be as successful as them. Well, that's not true, right? That is not true. In fact, especially in a more technical sale or where you really have to be knowledgeable on product and maybe even have some background education that gives you credibility, having too much of that can be a drawback. And so what you've got to do is
go in there. That's very true with pharmaceutical sales in my industry. When I first broke in, I would go in, I'm tall, I'm 6'7", I'm outgoing, and I would have this outgoing personality with a smile. Doctors in between, patients. I first started out in device, and being too happy at the wrong time when a physician is extraordinarily busy is not appropriate. But having, as you mentioned, Tom, the knowledge and I think the fact that you said I'm a little bit nerdy, my personality is different, I think that's going to be an encouragement to a lot of people thinking about whether it's medical device or pharmaceutical, is their skill set might be a little bit different. They may not be as outgoing as some. They may be, you have some knowledge and some clinical experience, but you're exactly right. The habits, showing up on time, your character, your discipline, that will transfer, whether it's medical sales or anything else. Those are life principles that your father, had, and you have continued to show.
Yeah. I mean, 100%. I mean, you can show up and knowledgeable, low key, and still positively contagious, right?
Yes.
Right? Where people want to be around you, and it's not because you overwhelm the room and you're doing the big handshake and the big smile. You can do that from any style. And of course, the professional salesperson reads the room and understands what the demeanor is of the person they're talking to, maybe what kind of style they probably have, and then that you match that, right? You meet them where they are. And so when I figured that out, that I just needed to be myself, but not just myself, the best version of myself, which means I'm prepared, I'm understanding what's going on in the room, and I'm being authentic, that's when you win. And so that's when that anxiety and worry just got channeled into positive, I'll call it positive nervousness, right? That nervousness that says, man, I got to show up ready, right? I'm not going to sleepwalk this. I'm going to put the effort in. I'm going to know everything I need to know, and I'm going to go in there and be prepared to deliver.
You mentioned reading the room. There are those who have never done any type of sales. And I think that is a skill set that is transferable. We have teachers wanting to break in. Well, as a teacher, they need to read the room, see the students. A nurse is going to have to understand not just the patient, but the collaboration with other nurses, doctors. But that is a skill set. Some have it, but some will need to really work on understanding and reading the room, regardless of their personality. Do you have any suggestions, practical suggestions for those wanting to get into sales in general? Just some skill sets, some habits that might help them to connect with people a little bit better.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. That's a really wide topic you opened up. We, in the sales training that we do and deliver, many times we include DISC, D-I-S-C, which is a personality style training. And we teach salespeople really to understand their own style, where they're coming from, and then to understand the 4 primary styles that are out there. And everybody's a blend, right? So when we say a D, we say that's somebody who's direct, dominant, they're a decision maker. They, and a lot of cardiologists, heart surgeons, there's a lot of D's there, right? Because they hold the patient's heart in their hands. That takes a pretty decisive decision maker. And you don't know exactly when you walk in what their style is, but you've kind of got a pretty good chance that that's going to be something. And so you can ask questions that will help reveal that. If the doctor comes in and says, I know you got a lot to say. I got 5 minutes. What are the 3 things I need to leave with? You're probably talking to a high D, right? If they say, tell me what's going on here, and then they ask for proof, like they want to see the research or the paper or whatever you're citing, then that's probably a high C, right?
Yes.
That's an accountant. That's a very detail-oriented person. If they come in and they're like, "Hey, how was your weekend? I haven't seen you in 2 weeks," or who are you seeing? Are you going down to Dr. So and so? Make sure you ask them. They just had a new baby, right? That's an I. Right.
Yes.
That's an extrovert. That's somebody who you can, talk a little bit extra with. And then if they're like me, they're an S, they might ask you how you're doing. Hey, it's been a while. How you doing?
What does the S stand for?
That's the steady, right? That's the person. They're very relational. So in an office, a lot of times the office manager might be an S, or their right hand might be an S, because they're the ones who keep the office together. They keep everything flowing. The person who's doing the payables and the billables and all that's going to be the C. The receptionist at the front desk, that might be the extrovert, the I. If doctors are having practice where they really want to make a great first impression, they've probably got an I who's there. We've done some work in the industry, and let's say you're going to do a brown bag or a lunch, and you've got 10 minutes to win over that group that you're just have that time with. In that presentation that you do, you're going to have to appeal to all 4 of those styles in that presentation. So you better make sure that you have those elements in there. Right?
I like that. And that is so true across the board with physicians, because most physicians have all 4 of those skill sets, but they will be dominant in others. And anytime there is an in-service, there will not just be the physician that you want on your side, but there will often be, nurse practitioners, nurses, medical assistants, the office manager, as you mentioned. And I like that. I want to go back and take that. I think my first was an I when I last took it, and then it was D second. What was your second, Tom? Well, do you remember your order?
I'm an SC, so detail.
Okay.
So I'm a very process flow sequence. I like detail when I need to verify the why, right? I need to know that it's true. But a true C would just say, bring me all the detail, right? I don't want that. I want the overview. And then if it doesn't feel right, I'd say, okay, so how do we prove this? And I would probably, S's are very trusting. So if you said, here are the 3 things, and you just showed me those 3, I'd probably believe you.
Yeah.
A true C would be like, yeah, let me look at all of it and I'll get back to you.
Yes.
The reason in a group presentation, even if it's only 10 minutes, to have a little bit of each of those in that presentation is the doctor might be the final decision maker, but you don't know who the influencers are. And if
That's
the
very true.
and if the influencer is a little skeptical because you came across as too extroverted, all sizzle, no meat, they're going to be like, yeah, I'm not sure we want to do this right now because what they're feeling is they're going to have to catch the slack. They're going to have to do a lot of the work. But if in that same presentation you say, hey, look, I prepared this outline here. It's got every detail. And for those of you who like the detail, we can support it. All the back end is taken care of. If you need more time, I can go into this at another time. But I want you to know we have it. That'll usually, the detail-oriented people, they'll be happy with that, right?
What you're sharing here is going to help a lot of our listeners who have misconceptions about sales. There's so many, I think, who have this stereotypical, and even when they're interviewing, they feel like salespeople have a certain type of personality and they have to prove themselves. And they have to, show how good they are, when what you're talking about is having this emotional intelligence, observing the room and understanding these 4 different personality types, and understanding that there might be some decision makers in that room, and 2 people, physician, decision maker, office manager, maybe another colleague, who have different personalities, and they'll have to adapt. One thing that your dad says, and you've updated and revised some of your father's books, but in one of the books, Secrets of Closing the Sale, by Zig and Tom Ziglar, one of the quotes your father said is that that everybody is a salesperson and everything is selling. Do you still agree with that? How do you see that playing out in today's world? Because I'm there's this misconception, but can you give a comment on that statement?
Yeah, well, the truth is, if you've ever been on a date, you're a salesperson.
Yes.
You had to do it. If you've got kids, you know very quickly they're selling you all the time on what they want, and you have to sell them on getting them to do things that are in their best interest or the family's best interest, but they don't see it, right? So all of us are selling all the time, and so but the difference is the way we perceive ourselves, and so unfortunately, there's a lot of people who think the word sales or sales professional, salesman, saleswoman has a negative connotation. And at Ziglar, we look at it exactly the opposite. And here's what I mean by that. A salesperson, a skilled salesperson, has the ability to persuade someone to make a decision. And when you have that ability, that means that you have the highest moral responsibility to do the right thing. Which
Yes.
means that being a professional salesperson is the highest moral job you can do, because you can get people to do things that may or may not be in their best interest.
And that's certainly true in medical sales. If in pharma there are reps, the best reps will always stick to what is best for the patient and not try to bend or blur the lines. And the same in device. It's true in the field that I'm in, especially oncology. Take lung cancer patients who have a particular mutation, and it may be that our drug is best for them. It's FDA approved in this line, but there are other patients who have non-small cell lung cancer who this drug is not the best for. And I think for those who maybe came from a different type of cell and coming into this, what you mentioned, the weight of the moral responsibility, the integrity, that lives are at stake. And this should certainly be something that is virtuous, but there is a moral component and calling to it. I want to talk about starting strong and maybe get your your perspective on this, because I want those who go into medical sales or pharma sales or any type of sales, they may listen to our program, Tom, and say, pharma's not best for me. And and I would encourage you, if you want to get into other types of sales as well, check out Ziglar, follow Tom, and I'm going to give you the opportunity to talk about your program and your books here. But your dad once said that you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. I think there's a lot of people who are waiting for the perfect moment. They don't feel like they have it all together. They want to be a person of integrity and do the right thing, but they're lacking that confidence in themselves. Can you talk to us about just getting started? Because I think some people are plagued, because they see the moral weight, they're plagued with indecisiveness.
Yeah, and what's happened is we live in a culture where our value is based on the results that we get. Right. And so if you try something and fail and you don't get the result, then your value goes down. And so we have this response that says, well, I don't know how to do that. And I've only been thinking about this I can't go call on that customer. What if this happens or that happens, right? And what they are is they're completely results focused. So Dad had a great quote. He said, anything worth doing is worth doing poorly until you learn to do it well. So anybody who's at the top of their field, whatever, no matter whether it's athletics or business or sales, it doesn't matter. They were all doing it poorly until they learned to do it well. And so you've got to have a mindset shift. And that is you place your value not on the result that you get, but on the growth that you had. Yes. And so every day is a winning day if I grew, if I learned something, if I applied something different, if I learned a lesson. And if your goal is to grow every day in what you do, in your presentation, how you read the room, your sales skills, your product knowledge, your follow-up, your prospecting, the little extra think it doesn't matter. If every day you grow a little bit, guess what happens? The results show up. And
yes.
I think that's where most hesitation is. It's that some people are afraid to step out there outside of their comfort zone because they think that they're going to be less valuable because they didn't get the result. When the reality is your value increases only when you grow as a human being.
That's so true of my life in pharmaceutical. When I started out in medical device, I came into your office there in Dallas 8 years ago. I was in my mid-30s. I was in nonprofit ministry. I wasn't making a lot of money. I thought, I'm single. I want to get married someday, and I better do something different if I want to someday get married, provide for my family. My passion, I'd gotten degrees, went to seminary, taught at a Christian school, and I was just kind of struggling to make ends meet. And when I first started out in medical device, I was horrible. I remember my manager cussing me out and saying to me on the ride, I went in, asked for an in-service, and my manager said, well, what the F was that? I've never seen a presentation so bad. And he knew I was a person of faith. I had to ride in the car with him. He felt bad. And he actually started putting on Christian music. He thought that, but he's like, you know what? I shouldn't have cussed you out there when we got back. And, but I was pretty bad. I mean, I didn't know always when to say things, how to say things, but I grew in the process. And I think for those wanting to get into pharmaceutical medical device, you will grow as an individual. But that applies to life as well. And sometimes we need to allow ourselves to be disrupted, allow ourselves to change. You wrote a book about some principles for disruptive times. Now, you wrote that during COVID, but I was wondering if you could maybe reference that. You talked to me a little bit last time I had you on a podcast, but could you talk to us about some of those principles when times are changing, when there's uncertainties, how we can grow in the process?
Yeah, so there's disruptive times. We've always had them. We always will have them. COVID was huge, but something even bigger than COVID's coming. and it's going to be a game changer, 10x what COVID was, and that's artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Right? I mean, it's going to really impact everything that we do. And it doesn't matter if you're a small business, a huge pharmaceutical company, a salesperson, a doctor, AI is coming. And so the majority of the world, and I've probably surveyed a couple thousand people on this, and I asked the question, are you generally nervous about artificial intelligence and how it's going to impact you and your career? Or are you generally optimistic about how it's going to help you and enhance you and allow you to serve more people? It's about 70 to 80% nervous, right? People are worried. And so for everybody who understands it, I think it's the game-changing advantage for people who get on early. There's two things that artificial intelligence will never do. It'll never have wisdom. It'll have a lot of knowledge, but it's not going to have wisdom. And the second is it will never build relationships.
I love that.
And so when you understand that ultimately all of sales is about relationships, then
it's so true.
Right? You're doing something that AI is never going to do. Now, wisdom, when you're presented with a case or you get that tough question, AI is not, you're not going to be able to go into AI and say, what should we do in this case? You're going to have to rely on your experience and the experience of your team to say, hey, this is an interesting situation. What do we do here? You've got to go back to the wisdom of the people who have had hands-on experience, which means you've got to have relationships with those people as well in order to bring that wisdom. But how does AI become your friend? Well, all the stuff that takes a lot of time, like prospecting, understanding the client needs, putting together presentations and proposals, all that stuff, it might take you 3 or 4 hours a day now to do all that stuff. AI in the very near future is going to do all that in minutes. And it's going to do it. It's going to do it near perfectly and near instantly. And so what does that mean? It means that in an 8-hour day where 50% of your time was busy work, that might only be 10% of your time now. So what do you do with that 40% more time that you have? You build relationships. And so
I like that.
No matter what sales you're in, if you focus on building the relationships and you're the best in the world at that, it doesn't matter what happens to your company, your industry, you will be in high demand because the relationship need and game will always be number one. And it's even with AI, it's even more important now because a lot of people are like, oh, I'll just automate this. I'll just let the machines do it. Yeah, that's a quick route to the bottom. And we've seen it over and over again. So,
and I like that you mentioned that it will not have wisdom. It'll have knowledge, right? But the wisdom to discern how to do it. And second, relationships. And that's why I don't think the salesperson will go away. There's always, those who are skeptical or those who will say, well, we won't even need medical sales reps anymore because of technology and AI and the lack of access. But people are struggling with trust. There's so much knowledge out there that there is sometimes confusion about what to trust, what treatment is best. And I think as we can build relationships, we can also build trust. Tom, tell us a little bit about Ziglar, your corporation, your programs, maybe an introduction to a recent book or a recent program that you're doing and how that might benefit our audience. Because for our audience, it may be that medical sales U is not the best fit for them. Maybe they want to join their program, maybe both. But tell us a little bit about your program because we have a wide range of our audience, and I think you can provide a lot of value for them.
Yeah, so you find us at Ziglar.com. And I'm excited about our time today because we have just launched a new sales program, Ziglar Sales Success, Selling in the Modern Era. And what we've done is we've taken the things that never change, the truth, the values, the virtues, the principles, the fact that trust is the key. But the world has changed, right? How we sell, the way it is. And we've created this new 2-day program for sales professionals. And I'll just give you a snippet. I'll talk about the old way and the new way. So the old way, and there's tons of selling processes out there. And so this is very generic. But the way sales used to be is we'd go in, we'd build rapport, we'd qualify to see if it's a fit. We'd do the presentation and then we would close, okay? And the time would be like 10% on rapport, 20% on qualifying, 30% of our time on presenting, and then 40% on closing, right? And that's where sales got the bad name because it became ping pong negotiation, and we hated it. Well, now we've never had more educated buyers. I mean, they can literally just ask a few questions and they get educated on it. And so we've got to know our product, but guess what? They come into that meeting knowing a lot, right? And so instead of rapport, we start the sales process that we teach with trust, right? And it's all about building trust. And then once the trust is established, we've got some of that laid down. We go into qualifying to really understand the needs that they have, the wants that they have, what their end results are, and then presenting and then closing. But here's the big difference. We spend 40% of our time on trust and 30% of our time on qualifying. And
40% on trust.
Yeah. And then when we do the presentation, which is only 20% of the whole time, we're only presenting on the 20% that they want, right? We're not giving them soup to nuts. We're working with them on what they said was important to me. And then the close, there's a close and we ask for the business, but that's less than 10% of the time. And a lot of times it just happens naturally because we have invested the time to build the trust, to understand what they need. And the presentation draws out the questions. So the final question is, when do we start, right? So that's the old way versus the new way. And so a lot of people who have been hesitant to go into sales in the past because of the moral responsibility and the stigma that the industry have, I got good news for you. It's waiting for you because the new way that works is the right way and is what we've always taught, but the world's catching up. So that's just a snippet of it, but you can find all that at Ziglar.com. And
Ziglar.com.
Yeah.
I love it. And tell us, just mention maybe Choose to Win or just mention a couple of your books and maybe if you just want to highlight one or two of your books. We see them behind you.
Yeah. So I've written 2 books, Choose to Win and 10 Leadership Virtues for Disruptive Times. So Choose to Win is a personal development book. It's about creating a life that you want, balanced success, but you got to choose it. And we go through every area of life, the mental, spiritual, physical, family, financial, personal, and career. We've got coaching programs built around this. We've got hundreds of coaches that are out there coaching their clients through this process. And then 10 Leadership Virtues for Disruptive Times. That came out. I wrote it during COVID. And it's an evergreen book. It's really 3 things. What's the mindset that we need to have in disruption? And when we understand that disruption is always coming, and in fact, it's going to increase in intensity and frequency. And if we embrace that and say, that's a good thing, why? Because I'm a learner and I'm always growing. And as the faster the future changes, the more the learners and the growers are rewarded, right? So I got to get.
You have a mindset difference, and I think that's key for people in this industry. Is because some people who are applying for jobs are like, well, I applied to this position, I didn't get it. I'll apply to this one, and then they embrace this negative attitude. And I think what you do so well, Tom, in both these books, and I enjoyed listening to audio when I'm out in the car, and that's another way I think our listeners, as they're out driving, is to listen to these. It's a mindset, change to say, I'm going to choose to win. And no matter what happens to me, I'm not going to worry about those things. I'm going to control what I can control. That's my attitude. That's the integrity, the way I treat others. And Tom, I just really appreciate that. So I encourage our audience. We'll have links to your website, to Ziglar.com, and to your books as well. Tom, just for fun, as we close out here, tell us, can you tell us some place fun that you have recently traveled, or if you have a vacation coming on up, just curious about you and your plans outside of work.
Yeah, so just got back from vacation in Boca Raton, Florida,
Wow.
which was nice. We had really good food, probably 8 or 10 times going out for lunch and dinner, and the beaches there are beautiful. And so my next trip is not for a couple of days, and I head to Destin, Florida for a conference.
Back to Florida.
Destin, Florida. So it's terrible that you have to go and speak and work in a place like that with beautiful beaches, sunrises, and sunsets. So just blessed indeed.
Well, I hope you enjoy the beautiful weather. And are you working on any new books? Are you focused more on presenting the message and the content with your course that you've created?
So the 10 Leadership Virtues book has really taken a lot of time. I'm doing a ton of leadership presentations and development. I've traveled internationally to go and deliver that. Huge companies here in the U.S., working with them on it. So leadership's been kind of that focus that's kept me busy. And then kind of one of my passions is coaching leaders on how to coach their people. I mean, that's leadership is the thing that I love the most of all the things that I do, as far as, because a leader, if they take what we learn and then impact their team, that's a ripple effect. And so we work with sales leaders, CEOs, executives, all different areas in that. But that's what's keeping me busy.
We've had some, executive vice presidents, those leading teams, listen to our program. They're interested as well. So I think, and even what I'm doing, I've had a lot of experience, more tenured pharma reps, medical sales reps who've been in it longer than I have. They're like, well, how do you get into this? And I think a program like that will be a great. Do they find out about that more at Ziglar.com as well?
Yes, Ziglar.com.
Excellent.
And if anybody wants to reach out to me directly, they can just email me. I'm one of these weird people that answers email. tziglar@ziglar.com. So
excellent. You responded to mine as well. Well, thank you so much. Well, Tom, thank you so much for joining the program. And again, for those of you who are interested in Tom's work, go over to Ziglar.com. And also, maybe there's a few of you who want to join our program at medicalsalesu, who want to break into medical sales or pharmaceutical sales, especially those who don't have experience, who want to get in quickly. I'll coach you through that process. And we just thank you again for joining our program at medicalsalesu.